Hi guys, welcome to this tutorial where we're going to continue learning After Effects, and today we're going to create two different kind of split screen effects within two tutorials. So we're going to start with this one. So I'm just going to go to After Effects. So last time we kind of used After Effects internal assets and we created shapes and squares and we could create any shape. But obviously you can use any assets that you want within After Effects. So I'm just going to go to my Finder window and find these two pieces of content that we have, which is this kind of really slow wavy bit and then that really fast moving street. We have our project window here, and that's basically where all of our assets will go. So that will be photos, audio files, movies, footage, anything you can think of you can use within After Effects. And there's lots of different ways of importing it into After Effects. You could go to File, Import File, which will open a dialog. You could double click in here. You could hit Command I, which is a shortcut. But I find the easiest way, because usually I kind of have a folder open where I put everything and you can just drag and drop it from Finder. So I'm just going to do that, these two pieces of footage, and drag them into the project window. Right. And the next thing is, like, at the moment this project is going to be fairly neat because we're not using lots of assets. But generally when you work in After Effects, I would recommend that you start using kind of like a neat folder structure and put things into folders to just keep it organized. So I'm just going to create a new folder with this icon down here and name it Footage, and just select and drag those two things in there, and I'm going to create another folder that is called Compositions. Alright, so first of all we need to create a new composition, and you can do that kind of on clicking this icon on the bottom here, and we know that, right, so you can put in kind of the size of your composition and name and everything like that and the duration, but we kind of want to create a composition that is exactly the same length as our piece of footage. And you know, you could type all of these values in and look up how long it is and what size it is, but that's all a little bit annoying. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to take the time-lapse driving piece of footage and I'm just going to drag it onto that icon down here, which usually creates a new composition. What that does, it just creates a new composition that has exactly the same dimensions as our footage. And just for like order's sake, I'm just going to take it out of here and put it in the compositions folder. Right, so that's not exactly the same length as our time-lapse piece of footage. And if I hit spacebar, you know, it just previews fine. So next, in order to create a split screen effect, I want to put the second piece of footage in there as well. So I'm just going to take the ocean waves and make sure that it's dragged on top of the time lapse. So you can see here that it indicates where I want to put it in my comp. I want to put it in the very top. Right, it's a couple of things that happen now. So first of all, as you know it from Photoshop, now my ocean waves 100% cover up the footage underneath. But as all the Adobe projects are fairly similar, in front you can find this eye that basically just switches the layer on and off, makes it visible or invisible. And another thing to note is that our composition was based on the length of that time-lapse footage. So now if we hit spacebar to preview, you know, at this point the ocean waves just stop. You can tell, you know, the layer just doesn't exist after this, so that's basically where it ends. And you can tell that by these tiny little black corners of the layer. And, you know, that's really handy for lots of reasons. For example, if you have like a composition that has lots of different elements, it's useful to see where they start and end. You can edit in After Effects as well as in other softwares. Right, but you know, maybe I don't even want this to be this 10-second long, as you can see here. So I can manipulate the length of any layer in After Effects, and the way to do that is if you look at my mouse and kind of hover it towards the end of a layer, towards the beginning of a layer, the mouse cursor changes to these little arrows that point either side of it. If I go there and kind of click it, that way I can manipulate the length of my layer and kind of start editing. I can do the same in the front, but for now we don't need that. I just wanted to make you aware that every layer has a length, and sometimes when you can't see something it's because the layer is already finished. But another thing, so at the moment if I hit spacebar to preview the whole lot, it will just, well, there's some issues there that my computer has with previewing properly, but basically it will always preview up to the end of the composition, and that's not really what I want, because I only want to see that part of the composition where both of the footages are still visible. So I'm just going to go to the end of this, and there's another thing about the timeline. On top of the timeline there's this long grey bar with blue handles on either side, and what that is, that basically defines our preview area. And as with kind of manipulating the length of a layer, I can also manipulate, well, I can change our preview range. So I'm just going to hover over that blue end of that preview range, and again my mouse cursor is changing to a different arrow symbol, and that way I can just drag this blue end handle kind of to roughly the end of that ocean waves layer. And now if I hit spacebar and preview, it will only preview until that point, and then it will start again. Apologies for the preview, my After Effects is a bit slow. I'm just going to clear it up. Right, so now we have these two pieces of footage in one composition, one overlaying the next. So what we need to do now, that's still not doing it, don't worry about that. So what we need to do is kind of restrict one of them to only be visible on one half of the screen. There are many different ways of doing that, but the easiest way that we're going to use today is adding a mask to this layer. And we're going to use the same tool that we used last time to create the rectangle. The only thing that's really important, so if I choose this tool now, I can click anywhere and then drag the mask, and you can see what it does. It kind of reveals the footage only where the mask is. But you have to be careful on where you are in your comp. If the ocean waves are not selected, if nothing in my timeline is selected, and I use the rectangle tool to draw something, it will create something new that's called a shape layer, which we used last week, and it's useful for lots of different things, but now we want to create a mask on this layer. So I'm just going to select the ocean waves again, make sure that rectangle tool is selected, and just click and drag anywhere outside and just draw a mask on that layer. Quite crudely. So, I kind of wanted to create it directly in the middle, but I didn't do it very well, so I'm just going to go ahead and choose the selection tool. And just manipulate the mask into wherever I want it to be. And one way you can see that it has all these points, so the mask is vector based, and I can now click and drag on any of those points and rearrange it to where I want it to be. But that might be quite laborious if you have a mask that has lots of points. So you can see at the moment those dots are circular, and that means that they're unselected. Once I click on one of them, it turns into a square, and it's like a filled-in square, which means I have this point selected at the moment. If I then double-click on it, that brings up this transform frame that you probably know from Photoshop as well, when you transform a layer, and that lets you manipulate the whole mask as one. You could go, if you click outside of it, you can rotate it, but we don't want that. All I want to do is kind of make sure that's sitting somewhere flush in the middle of the screen. Right, so, that's already not bad, but I kind of want to see a bit more of both of my pieces of footage. I kind of want to see the vantage point of both of them. And for the one in the background, that's fairly easy because it's just lying there with no mask, not doing anything at all. So I can just select it and drag it anywhere I want, But what I'm going to do, because what I really like doing is hitting Shift when I move stuff, because what Shift does is restricts the movement to 90 degrees. So now I can only move it horizontally or vertically, and it makes sure that I don't lose any pixels top or bottom. I want to make sure that it's not like this, that it's not like that, that it's kind of really flush. So basically, once it's like this, I'm going to click on it, start moving it, and then hit Shift, and it will automatically restrict it to only moving in 90-degree angles. Right, now with the other piece, I kind of want to do the same with the ocean waves. But that slightly, well, that's slightly different because I have the mask on there now. So if I were to select the layer and kind of just click and drag the layer, you can see that the mask is now attached to the layer, and that's not what I want to do. There's lots of different ways. You could, of course, kind of move it there and then readjust the mask to fit the middle, but that's all a bit laborious and not really what we're going to do. So what I'm going to use, again, we used it for something else last week. I'm just going to use this tool up here, which is called the Pan Behind tool. And with that selected, and then again hitting Shift, that basically lets me move the piece of footage within the mask without actually moving the position of the mask within my composition. And that's probably the easiest way to do it. So now I've hit spacebar, you know, they play kind of really nice opposite each other, one really slow, one really fast. Yeah, and that's basically it for the first of the two. And we're going to move on to the next one in another tutorial that will follow shortly. So the only thing that's left to do is kind of render this out. So I'm just going to go to Composition, Add to Render Queue. And then what we want to make sure, because, well, the first thing we need to do is kind of choose where we want to output it to and give it a name that makes more sense. So I'm just going to put it in here and call it Split Screen Fast Slow. Right, and then another thing, so if I render this now, the file will come out fairly big because it renders each and every pixel in my image. What I want to do in order to kind of keep sizes low, and because it's like a test thing, it's not really something I want to use for something big on installation. So what I'm going to do in the output module, at the moment it says lossless, and that will produce a fairly big sized movie. So if I click on here, it opens this dialog, and the format will still be QuickTime, but we're going to choose a different codec to render it out. It's a bit like JPEG and TIFF. If you have JPEG, files are a lot smaller. You can have the same content as a TIFF, but it kind of it changes the quality a little bit, but it doesn't matter too much. So the one we were going to use, it's a fairly commonly used codec, which is called H.264. So I'm just going to use that one, hit OK, and that's the only thing we need to change. Everything else can stay the same. And then the last thing we need to do is hit render just here.